Hi there. Let's take a look at this question. I recommend you give it a try before we move on. Alright. Assuming that you have tried this, let's have a look at this question. Which of the following most directly refutes the argument raised in the advertisement above? Okay. So there is an argument. We need to read the argument, understand what it is saying, and we need to find out an answer choice that weakens or refutes the argument. That means something that goes against the argument. Alright, let's have a look. Are you still reading the other newspaper in town? Did you know that Daily Bugle is owned by an out-of-town business syndicate that couldn't care less about the people of Gotham City? Okay, so they are saying Daily Bugle is owned by outsiders, okay, and so doesn't care. All right, read the Daily Clarion DC. That is what needs to be read. The only real voice of the people of Gotham City. Okay, so what they are basically saying is that what is the logic for wanting to read DC is because it is the only voice, whereas DB is not the correct voice for Gotham City because it is owned by outsiders. Okay, so basically they are saying that if something is owned by outsiders, okay, owned by outsiders, then that is not the correct voice. Not correct voice. That's the logic that they are saying. So we need to refute it by saying that, okay, even if it is owned by outsiders, no, it is still the correct voice. That could be one possibility or something like that. Okay, let's look at the answer choices. It's a pretty interesting question. There is one answer choice that is really close. Over half of the advertising revenues of DC. Okay, now always be very careful. DB, DC. Let's understand very clearly what we are talking about, because under the exam pressure you are likely to confuse. Okay, so we are talking about DC. Over half the advertising revenues of DC comes from firms whose headquarters are located outside of Gotham City. Okay, so that means there is a lot of influence of outsiders. But what influence? Is it the influence of a real voice, or is it the influence about revenues? So they are talking about advertising revenues. What can we say about the real voice? It is fine. I mean, headquarters obviously probably not going to be in a small town like Gotham City, right? Headquarters could be in a bigger city. So it's fine even if the headquarters are outside. Doesn't really matter to this argument. Another way to look at this is that this answer choice doesn't say that even if the Daily Bugle is owned by outsider, it might still be the correct voice. Okay, that is what we want. This answer choice doesn't say that, so this is out. Now let's come to the interesting answer choice, which is B. The Daily Clarion DC again usually devotes more of its pages to outside town news than DB. Okay, now here one might think that, okay, now DC is talking more about outsiders, then how can it be the real voice of Gotham City? Okay, and that's how one might think that it refutes the argument. Okay, but that's not really the case, because again, a very clever trap that they have put here is that they're talking about more pages. Okay, absolute pages. How many pages? Let's say DB, let's say, let me do some math here. See, GMAT is very logical, so many times you have to do simple math. Let's say DB and DC. Okay, so now here they're saying DC has more pages to outside news than DB. So let's say for outside news there are 10 pages in DC and 5 pages in DB. That is the scenario that they are talking about. Okay, and but what does it mean for inside news? How many total? Let's say maybe this has 100, right? Inside news may be 90, whereas this might be only 7 pages and inside news maybe 2. Okay, so, or it could be the other way around also. Okay, we can't really know whether DB or DC is better with respect to inside news. Okay, we can't know that because we don't know the absolute number, total number rather, in both of these. Okay, but let's still park this. Let's see if you have a better answer choice. It's a very sort of a tricky, very slippery slope kind of a logic here. Okay, so it's possible that you may not get it in the first go. That's why we should always read all answer choices before we take conclude on one answer choice. Okay, and in this case we'll find that there are two answer choices that are very close, and then we'll dig deeper. Okay, so there's one little bit of gray area, but let's still park it. Let's move on to see. Nearly 40% of the readers of DC reside outside the limits of Gotham City. That is still fine. 60% of readers are still in Gotham City, right? What does that mean with respect to whether DC is the real voice? Okay, it is, in fact, if 60% people are inside Gotham City, it is likely to be the real voice. Okay, that argument can be employed, which works in favor of the given argument. Okay, not opposite. So this is out. The editor-in-chief and all other members of the editorial staff of DB have lived in and worked in Gotham City for 10 years or more. Okay, so all the editorial staff of DB is insiders. That's what it is saying. Okay, if that is the case, so we can argue that even if the company is owned by outsiders, right, the editors are insiders, and so DB can also be a real voice for Gotham City. That argument can be employed. So this would weaken. Okay, that's something that what we wanted. Okay, now we have two answer choices. Okay, we'll compare them. Let's still go through E. The Daily Bugle has been published in Gotham City for longer time than Daily Clarion. Okay, so longer time, does that say anything about real voice? Not necessarily. Okay, just because you are there for longer time doesn't mean that you are doing a better job. You're a real voice or not a real voice doesn't really mean anything. Okay, so this is out. Now we are down to B and D. The better answer choice would definitely be D, because it addresses the exact logic that you are owned by outsiders, so you are not the correct voice. And D says even if you are owned by outsiders, the actual guys, the editors, are insiders, so you might still be insiders. You might still be a good real voice. Okay, that is exactly how it is, how D is refuting the logic. B, like I said, there's a little bit of math, but even if you don't get into math, just because of number of pages, right, of outsider or inside does not really say anything about whether it's a real voice or not. Okay, there's a lot of other subjective content, like you may be dedicating less number of pages, fewer pages, but the content could be good, so there's a lot of subjectivity in that. So let's rule this out. The best answer choice, again I'm saying the best, not the correct one, because sometimes there are these gray areas, right? So the best answer choice is what we are supposed to choose. That's why they also use this term, most directly refutes. Okay, there may be some other answer choice that is refuting tangentially. We are not interested in that. We are interested in the one that most directly refutes. So the most directly refuting statement here would be answer choice D. So if you like the content, do subscribe and keep GMATing.